What is up? Good to see you. Welcome to the Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University. WilMU works. Noah Levick, the smartest man in the room, Danny Pommells and Ben Berry. You know, the headsets are on. That means we are at Rivers Casino here in South Philly. Come check us out if you're ever in the area. We announce, when the podcast will be live on social media. So it's a weird time here in the off season, Noah. The training camp is creeping up on us October 3rd, but this James Harden, Daryl Morey soap opera continues to fester and manifest in ways we probably didn't expect, because before we came on the air with the podcast earlier today, we found out through a Woj bomb that James Harden was given a little slap on the wrist, watch your mouth, $100,000 fine from the NBA because of his comments about Daryl Morey being a liar, but also that the idea of him not performing the services called for under his player contract unless he's sent to another team, making a public trade demand, something you can't do. And here we are as we figure out another wrinkle in this thing, the fallout from last week's comments from James Harden in China playing themselves out here. And I guess to be expected, but just another more detailed look at just how this thing is unfolding and unraveling a bit.
Yeah, I think it's always been a little strange how the NBA handles what consists of, what is a public trade request and how that should be punished. And, I believe in the most recent CBA, the maximum penalty for that has increased a little. And I think just overall, Adam Silver is a little more inclined to not let things slide. But yeah, we of course hear of many trade requests, but they are considered, acceptable by the NBA because they happen behind closed doors. For instance, Furkan Korkmaz telling Daryl Morey that he doesn't want to be a Sixer. That's okay because we are learning of that through reporting. We are not learning of that through Furkan Korkmaz, standing in front of a microphone and demanding to be traded. But it has been a little hard to figure out where the NBA draws a line on this sort of stuff in the past. I think Anthony Davis is the first star that pops to mind who got dinged for this specific offense a few years back, and that was via his agent, Rich Paul. But now it appears the NBA wants to be a little stricter, and I think James Harden gave them a decent amount of material to say, yes, that indeed falls under the umbrella of a public trade demand. And the NBA, as it detailed in its statement, did interview James Harden, and he did not deny that he meant what it sure sounded like he was saying, that he doesn't want to be a Sixer anymore, and he is dissatisfied with his belief that the Sixers are not doing what he's asked of them, which is to, give it their best shot to move him to another team. So, I think definitely justified for that to make headlines, and I think interesting to see perhaps a little shift in how the NBA is treating this stuff. But of course, $100,000, it's not nothing to most of us, but to James Harden, I'm not so sure it is a punishment that will lead to dramatic changes in his approach here.
You mentioned that part of the investigation by the NBA was an interview with Harden, and part of that interview helped clarify some of the speculation surrounding his comments, because, you could draw the inference, which we kind of alluded to in previous podcasts. Well, I'll say I alluded to in previous podcasts, that maybe it was connected to that meeting in the Hamptons or Martha's Vineyard, wherever that was, that maybe something was portrayed there that was disingenuous, that Harden was reflecting on when he called Daryl Morey a liar. But he clarified that by saying that he expected that when he opted into the final year of his contract, he was expecting to be moved, quote, quickly. And that, that was where the liar connection came in, because he wasn't moved and the trade talks with the Clippers broke off, et cetera, et cetera. How can he show up at camp? How can he show up at camp with all that's happened and it be business as usual? This has to play out differently than him just coming in and kind of sucking it up and just going through the motions.
Yeah, I think business as usual would be the most stunning possibility here, rather ironically. So, no, I think all indications are that if he indeed is physically there, that will not additionally mean that he is treating this like a standard James Harden training camp. So I don't think these recent developments, though notable, though rather dramatic, signify to us that James Harden is suddenly going to acquiesce to exactly what the Sixers want from him in that regard. As we've said, there is still some time for his mind to shift, but that time is running out. We're now looking at 6-ish weeks until the camp begins. James Harden will be celebrating his 34th birthday this weekend as well. So, yeah, business as usual. That would not be a phrase on my mind unless you had just put it out there, other than it is the exact opposite of what we have in front of us here, and not at all what I am projecting we will see from James Harden.
My, things deteriorate so quickly. And of course, unfortunately, we've had a precursor to what this might look like with the Ben Simmons situation. Also, we've had the instances where Harden has been disgruntled and dismayed and shown how he can dismantle and disrupt other NBA teams. So when we put together Harden's past situations in Houston and in Brooklyn, and how he managed to force his way out of both of those places, he found a soft landing place with his former GM front office friend Daryl Morey here in Philly. Ben Simmons forced the issue in a different way. Do you feel like this might be worse than Simmons in a way, just because Harden doesn't have as much to lose?
I mean, yeah, there are a lot of ways that you could judge that. As we said, there's many differences with the 1 year left on the contract versus 4.
That's the thing to
Harden,
me. He's not invested. Like, he's completely can check out in the worst way possible. If that's the way he chooses, that's my point.
Obviously the alternative stance there is, well, it sure seems to be in his best interest to eventually play games again and to show that he remains a valuable player and all of that. So, I mean, as far as worse, just purely in terms of like the optics for the team or the team, being a source of derision or of embarrassment or something. It's very subjective to me. I think, in Houston, there was the additional factor there of the NBA operating in a COVID world. And I remember James Harden was fined $50K for not conducting himself as the NBA wanted in terms of following COVID protocols. And, he was doing some nightlife activities that the NBA did not think were safe at that time. So, and then additionally, we remember just like reporting that he wasn't being the best teammate and was somewhat confrontational with younger guys on that team. With Brooklyn, it wasn't a training camp drama, obviously, but there was the game against, I think, Sacramento in February where he gave very minimal effort. So I think he has shown, little bits and pieces of the potential playbook, and there's an air of unpredictability as well, because he could throw something else out there. But if you're just talking purely from like the logistics, I think the Sixers side has pretty firmly been, it is in James's best interest to eventually get back out there on the court. And I think that does remain pretty logical. So there's the pure theatrical side, and then there's the, what is the ultimate outcome side of it. And I think this is different in certain ways, but I think just strictly in terms of, are the Sixers going to be in the NBA spotlight in ways that their fans would not desire? I think that already has been a yes, and it appears that is going to remain the case.
The saga continues with how the Sixers can find their way past the second round of the playoffs. And once again, it seems that they're kind of fighting behind the eight ball, trying to figure out a way to get around this Harden situation through the other teams that are good in the Eastern Conference and make an NBA Finals or just the Eastern Conference Finals appearance. So the water, it's definitely muddied, and it's unfortunate that Sixers fans have to endure this type of drama once again. And it's tough, man. It's like almost to a point where you are asking the team to show you that they can be what they want before you believe, like that faith, that unfettered faith that fans put into teams at the start of a season as hope is springs eternal and opportunities are there. It's like, wait a minute, like I can't put my heart on the line again. I can't give it all to you again after you continually show an off season in whatever ways that things aren't moving in the right direction. So frustrating time for Sixers fans. And, hopefully this thing will get figured out soon so that the Sixers can focus on basketball, being a good team, the good vibes can come back surrounding the squad.
I mean, yeah, this is very different from last offseason where I think there were many legit sources of optimism that led the Sixers pretty darn close to finally breaking through. But yeah, totally think you articulate well that, every positive bit of, past actions just feels hollow. Fans are very frustrated. Fans don't have a ton of the hope that is typical, at this time of the year. And part of that is just this stagnant approach and not really doing much from a depth standpoint either. There aren't really tons of new fresh faces to get excited about. You've got Mo Bamba, Patrick Beverley, I think guys that could potentially do well here, that could potentially be liked by fans, but I think much less so in this context than a typical offseason context.
Speaking of new fresh faces, one of them that was a bright spot late in the year, not necessarily surrounding the team, but the jersey, the 76ers brand and franchise, Mac McClung is no longer a part of the Sixers organization. He is headed to Orlando on a partially guaranteed deal. So props to him and the momentum he was able to create and to produce an opportunity for himself. Do you feel like that was a missed opportunity by the team? Were you hoping McClung would develop more here in Philly?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely possible that he cracks the NBA in some way, but I don't think I'd use those terms you just did. I mean, he's in his mid-20s, and I think has some well-known deficiencies despite the obvious, great athleticism and dunking and all that. Wasn't a Sixer. He had the two-way last year, and then they've chosen to go in other directions with their two-way slots. So, I think he is more than a dunker. I think he has some grit defensively, despite being a subpar NBA defender. I think he needs probably to hit threes and to be a microwave sort of scorer to prove he's worth a real NBA shot. But I think, him getting a partially guaranteed deal with the younger team is a nice chance for him. But I think it's also indicative of the Sixers didn't let, a gem go in all likelihood. I think Mac McClung has a shot to make the NBA, but I don't think, in my opinion, the Sixers squandered a fantastic prospect. But yeah, guy who brought a lot of pride to fans and a lot of entertainment, and credit to him for doing well, for being a champion on the Bluecoats. But yeah, personal opinion, I would not be aligned with that view that the Sixers let a great young player go in Mac McClung, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. Just my personal assessment.
No disrespect taken, sir. Let's take a time out here on the Sixers Talk podcast. We will dissect this roster a bit more and dig into the nuances of who needs to do what heading into next season. As Noah mentioned, we are 6 weeks out from training camp, but we, of course, are brought to you by Wilmington University, and we encourage you to find your higher education home at Wilmington University, where your academic success is celebrated by a caring community. Explore your opportunities at wilmu.edu. It is time to rush to new rewards at Rivers Casino. Now there's a whole new way for you to earn, redeem, and level up your rewards. Get your new Rush Rewards card and get more out of your game at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Well, Noah, we are hoping that this Sixers team is improved in various ways with or without a encouraged and motivated James Harden, but the reigning MVP sits on this Sixers team, and that should be enough to give fans some hope that there can be some momentum towards success this season. And by success, I mean postseason success. But let's take a look at this roster, Noah, and think about the things that we are hoping players improve on going into this next year. And let's start with that MVP.
Start with Embiid.
And for me, Embiid, it is squarely focused on the postseason for me. I am upset that he has this moniker of shrinking in those bigger games or not being as prolific as he was in the regular season and seizing opportunities and helping this team get over the hump. So I hate that he has to wear that moniker. And I'm looking for better playoff consistency from Joel Embiid. We are come from a league where the superstars do more in the postseason. The numbers are supposed to go up. They're not supposed to go down. They're not supposed to necessarily be stagnant. Although a guy who's averaging 30, 31 a game, I would take the status quo from the regular season to the postseason and not be too upset. But rebounding, the assist numbers, the field goal percentage, even the free throw percentage, whatever you want to point to, I feel like Embiid needs to carry the load more and be more dependable and reliable in the big games and the moments that matter. That's what I'm looking for from Joel. What are you looking for from him to improve?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's hard to disagree with. I said specifically just adjusting to this new offense that in all likelihood is going to have greater movement and variety around him. So, traditionally the Sixers have opted against unpredictable cutting when Embiid has the ball in the post or at the nail or at the top of the key. And it sounds like that's going to change under Nick Nurse. It's not going to be a Marc Gasol-ish outlook, but they are going to ask Embiid to spot open cutters and to be a better passer yet again and to avoid bad risks in big games and to figure out in this version of the offense under this coach, how do you trust the teammates? How do you make the right play time after time? And what exactly does that look like? So for me, everything you said is absolutely true, but I think that is vital for Embiid. It's broadly been important for him to improve as a passer. He's such a great scorer that inevitably is going to be a area of his game that's super key. But I think this new system is going to ask even a little more from him in that regard. It's just going to be different, and that's going to require intelligent adjustments and I think learning on the fly and just a willingness to embrace what Nick Nurse thinks he can improve for the Sixers offensively. And we know Embiid's going to be the hub of that. And that's, I think, a very, very important area.
No, well said, because when you think about it, that's not something that they're going to figure out in training camp and preseason. That's definitely part of Joel's game that will have to grow and he'll have to improve and, kind of modify what he does. But let's move to Tyrese Maxey. I'll let you go first on this one as I kind of tip the scales on Embiid there a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for Maxey, I think pick and roll ball handling and comfort as a decision maker out of the pick and roll. I think Nick Nurse correctly highlighted that as big for Maxey. And I think regardless of what happens with James Harden, you figure Tyrese Maxey will be asked to take on a higher usage. He's always been a low turnover guy, had that coach's son style of just not making bad choices. But I think he's not especially adventurous usually as a pick and roll player. And I think he can do way, way more with weaponizing his pace. This is something James Harden has talked about, PJ Tucker has talked about, where like Tyrese Maxey is among the 2 or 3 fastest players in the NBA, probably knowing how to vary the pace, how to hesitate, and how to do that in conjunction with a roller, I think is very big for his development. And figuring out too how to work with different types of rollers, right? Like a Montrezl Harrell is very different than a Joel Embiid or a Paul Reed. So yeah, there are a lot of little subcategories we can touch on with Maxey. I think drawing fouls still stands out to me as an area where he has real potential to do a lot better. But yeah, I think just the pick and roll game is where I would highlight for Tyrese Maxey.
That will be the big thing I will point to that I hope can come out of this Harden situation. That once he's traded and Maxey has more of an opportunity, we have seen him be ball dominant at times, but I'm looking for the aggression. There were times last season, particularly when James and Joel both are on the floor, that he's deferring the guys in certain moments where he can make any shot on the floor, and hit that lack of aggression maybe hurt the team in some instances, just because, Harden's shot making and Joel's shot making are elite, but Maxey's not far behind them, and him taking steps forward with not deferring and being aggressive is only going to help the team more. And I'm hoping that because Harden will be traded and he won't be on the team, that Maxey will see that opportunity to step in and grow and blossom more. And I think that's the thing that I'm focused on the most. I mean, you mentioned the pick and roll stuff. It's like, parts of his game that you can see with the pace and things like that. You're hoping that can all come together, as just a natural growth of him being a older player and being in the NBA more and being more confident to, be on the floor with other elite players and not give them the first right of refusal. You know what I'm saying? So I'm excited to see what he brings and what he's been working on, but I definitely feel like the aggression and not deferring is important to me. But let's move past James Harden and go to Tobias Harris. I just really have listened to some things you've said, looked at the numbers, and he's been pretty dependable and maybe not deserving of some of the criticism. The face Ben Berry just gave me some of the criticism he's faced. You had him in that list of like all-time Sixers.
I didn't. No, I think I had him as a close-ish cut, but he was an honorable mention, just mostly because, look, the norm in the NBA is historically guys change teams a bunch. He's been here a while. He's been above average each year he's been here. I think, judging Sixers history, that makes him, probably one of the best 36ers of all time. So yeah, I did not mean that as an especially bold take on, Tobias Harris being severely underrated, but I do think I would stand behind the opinion that he's been here 4 years. Every single year he's been an above average player, and he has somewhat admirably made improvements in several areas of his game. He's definitely a way better defender than when he first got here. And I think, yes, he is not what many fans hoped for. He takes a lot of fair criticism, but I think all of the ways in which he's pretty valuable and pretty good are, at least also worth noting.
The area where I think that he deserves criticism is that he doesn't quite produce many superstar moments, or moments that when the other stars aren't on the floor, he steps up in the way that fills the void or helps propel the team over into a win. And you hear Doc Rivers, last season talk so much about the Clippers version of Tobias and how much that might come to fruition here and things like that. We never have quite seen, that scoring, dominant version of Tobias Harris, but I feel like those superstar moments, those opportunities are there. He doesn't necessarily seize them as much as I would hope. And that would be something, as he's in his later years, as far as an NBA veteran, might come to fruition at some point. But
I don't know. I mean, I think he's accepted the role here, and the role is not to take shots from Joel Embiid or James Harden. And I think he has had some good shorthanded games. The clincher against Brooklyn, he was really strong. I think he was in the high 20s in points there, and efficient, and doing a lot of the classic, ISO mid-post scoring. he hasn't been good enough in second round series. He just hasn't been like able to take that leap just in a holistic sense from like very good player to player who helps a team, get to the elite, status of the NBA. For me, I think it's bringing greater physicality to the table night after night. I don't mean that to say like he's a soft player or he is shying away from contact or anything along those lines, but he's gotten himself to a point through his hard work where he's really sturdy physically, and he should, it seems, be better at drawing fouls, at grabbing offensive rebounds, and at helping the Sixers to be a tougher team. I just think when he brings those qualities to the table, they look harder to beat. They look a little more menacing, a little more well-rounded, and I think that feels like it's a real deficiency in his game, that he should be able to bring some of that old school stuff to the table in a way that's productive, and it hasn't been there, night after night for the Sixers, in my opinion. Not a lack of effort thing. I think a lot of it's just stylistic and habitual at this point, but if he can improve a bit with, crashing hard for timely offensive rebounds, knowing how to draw another whistle or two in a big game, I think that's meaningful. I think at this stage of his career, not realistic to expect any, vast changes in who he is as a player, but I think that doesn't feel out of the question, that he could do a little better in the physicality area.
PJ Tucker will be 39 in May. What are you thinking for PJ?
I think just don't fade from the offense. I think we saw a lot of that early in the year, and by the playoffs, he was, I think, on point as a decision maker. He took the open corner threes. The Sixers wish he had a few more, but nothing for me wrong with the shots he did and didn't take in important moments. But yeah, I just think from early in the season, especially with a new coach where you want to set a standard of this is our style and this is, the role X, Y, and Z guys should play. I think he should be more involved in the offense. And that doesn't always need to mean 3-pointers and usage rate or anything like that. But we saw in Miami, he's, I think, sneaky good as like a short roll playmaker, as a dribble handoff guy, as a, small ball center, setting screens and rolling. So, I think he was better in all those areas as the year progressed. I think it's understandable that there was an adjustment period, but as he said, he's undoubtedly a veteran, and I think it would be quite useful for the Sixers if he's locked in across the board with full engagement in the offense, not fading from possessions, getting touches, not in a way that detracts from stars, but in a way that just helps things to flow a little better. And we did see some possessions this year where he had an open shot, didn't take it, and that ground things to a halt a little bit. I think PJ Tucker and the Sixers would be better off if we get less of that this year.
I think that's a great point because he played 26 minutes a game last year, and the production doesn't warrant that amount of time on the floor. So if he's going to be out there for that length of time, he's got to bring some value on a more consistent basis. So if he's not going to, he just needs less of a role and more targeted minutes, if that's the case. But definitely an area they need to figure out, because if you're going to have Mo Bamba on the roster, these other backup bigs, and Tucker's playing 26 minutes a game where they're younger and maybe more versatile, but yet don't have that opportunity, then it's just a middle ground they need to figure out.
PJ Tucker's versatile, so I don't think I'd knock him there. But
they got to figure out how to use him then properly.
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely he's still an option at the 5. I think he's still capable of guarding 4 as well. And he has most definitely dropped off a bit as far as ability to guard, the agile wings of the world. So I do think that limits him a bit. Yeah, I mean, I don't mean my point as like his production was, unacceptable and he needs to put up way more points. But yeah, I think just take the shots that are open and be involved in the offense at a higher level. And absolutely, wouldn't be a shocker at all if his minutes decline. whether that's due to substandard performance, which would obviously not be ideal, or whether it's just due to caution and due to the fact that he is at an advanced age for the NBA, and they do want him to be healthy for the playoffs. And perhaps a little lower risk approach would be sensible there, given they've got a bunch of front court players, and you just don't want to tax him too heavily, I think, during the regular season.
Mr. Versatility, DeAnthony Melton. It was tough for me to find areas where I thought he could improve. Noah, I'll let you go first if there was something.
Yeah,
specific.
for me, there was. I agree. Like, he is very strong in a bunch of spots, but I think just the feel and overall efficiency in the paint and around the rim. Statistically, he was bad, in that area, and to me, it matched what I saw. As far as finishing and floaters and just like 10 feet and in, basically. Yeah. Per Cleaning the Glass last year, he was in the 29th percentile for combo guards at the rim, the 17th percentile on short mid-range shots, and I think that stood out in transition, where he'd make a spectacular defensive play and would seem to have an easy layup, and then somehow find a way to squander that opportunity. So I think it sure looks like he's going to be a great fit for Nick Nurse. He's going to play disruptive defense, force a bunch of turnovers, be sharper around the rim, develop some more polish that enables you to convert those turnovers into points for yourself. So I think if he became an average player in that regard, that's a really important improvement. And it elevates his game to a significant degree, because, as you said, it's hard to find much else where he's weak. I think he's an excellent player, and as you said, super versatile. Going to, I think, again, be a great player for the Sixers, but man, I think the dependability with the finishing, it would be massive if he can make some upgrades there.
Yeah, in 28 minutes a game, he shot 48% from 2 and 39% from 3. And I definitely see those nuances that you mentioned, 10 feet and in, and kind of that in-between game. Sometimes he does kind of
doubts himself sometimes. Yeah. He doesn't, right as he's about to release the ball, he's like, oh, should that have been a jump stop, or should that have been a floater, or oh, should I have gone all the, it just some hesitation. And I imagine part of that stems from he's been a role player his whole NBA career, and it's maybe not as natural for him to just attack the rim or to have that aggressive mindset. But some of it's, I think, also just he's got to put that work in to have a more diverse package of finishes that he can turn to, and he will hope that those pay dividends in games. So that's what I see as being a bit problematic there for him. And yeah, I was curious if the numbers backed it up, and they indeed did. He's below average with the finishing, and the Sixers would love if that's no longer the case.
Man, he is a big contract year for him as well. So
yes.
We'll see how he plays in relation to what you mentioned and that in-between area, and if he can improve even more. I mean, we remember how he filled in the backcourt when James Harden was out earlier in the season. Just very versatile, off the bench, starting.
Could be a starter, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So a very interesting subject. Mr. Out of the Mud, Paul Reed, where are you at with him?
Just be playable as a power forward, and I think there's not really any reason to have concern there defensively, but find the right mix of offensive tools that enables you to play minutes at the 4. So we saw in the G League, he had this very unique style that was quirky and included, the occasional Euro step and audacious driving. And it did notably also involve him taking open threes and making over 40% of them. So just if the threes translate to the NBA and he's taking them comfortably and efficiently, great. But I think make a pretty swift adjustment with what does playing the 4 look like for you next to Joel Embiid, and how does your role change at the 4 versus the 5? How aggressive should you be next to a superstar? A lot of it is, I imagine, is just going to boil down to the 3-point shot. But I think also the approach is intriguing because we've seen he catches defenders off guard at times because he doesn't really play like the average NBA guy. But now, look, minutes at the 4, what is going to be different for him? I think that's an important question. And as we said, the contract and the Sixers choosing to match that offer sheet, I think that decision looks much smarter if Paul Reed out of the gate is giving them strong minutes at the 4.
Yeah, huge opportunity for Paul Reed. New coaching staff, maybe some newfound confidence after the team showed that they are willing to match an opposing team's offer. That can go the other way, though. We've seen so many guys who have fought and scratched and clawed to get to where they are, get the bag, and then not quite play up to snuff after getting paid. I don't think that's the situation with Paul Reed. We saw him at the Danny Rumpf Classic, popping out and, just showing how connected to the community and how much it matters to him playing here in Philly to show up as something like that. I think it's a great opportunity because of the new coaching staff. You can take all those little tools and tricks that you learned from Doc Rivers and company about his coachability and his awareness out on the floor and take that and show Nick Nurse and his coaching staff that I've learned something that maybe I've learned from Doc Rivers and the previous regime, but you don't have to know that. You can just think that this is how I've been playing and where I've been all along. And I just think that also he needs to outplay the other guys that are in that front court C to propel himself, kind of to the forefront of that and show he's worth the daggone money. You know what I'm saying? Like this is a chance for him to develop, change, and push a new narrative that can give him a longer NBA career and give him an opportunity to play more. So,
definitely. Yeah. I've not a shocker, but I've heard that Nick Nurse is very high on Paul Reed. And I think optimistic about the player that he can become and the improvements that he can make. So
that's great to hear.
I think opportunities are going to be there for him at the 4. And if he can seize them, that contract potentially looks like a savvy one for the Sixers. But I think Paul Reed is not the sort of person who gets the money and is satisfied and sits back and loses hunger. I think that's just innately not his style. But the new role, the new coach, and how he takes to all of it, that's going to be interesting to watch and see.
Talk about a guy we hope doesn't lose his hunger. Pat Bev, 28 minutes a game last season. That surprised me when I looked that up. But what are you thinking Nick Nurse and company are thinking about him and what he can bring here in his later years? Is he 35? Is he that old?
We might be giving him a year or two there.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head, but he, I think, is hopeful that there's some NBA years ahead of him. But I think
1 year deal, right?
1 year, minimum deal, and obviously would love to play basketball with James Harden again, and is very unsure whether that's going to happen. On the court, I think just the catch and shoot threes. So
he is 35.
35, okay.
No, surprised too.
Yeah, he played overseas and then right. So I guess 35 years old for Pat Bev. Really consistent catch and shoot player. I thought it was remarkable from
the catch and shoot numbers are great
until last year. So 2013-14 through 21-22, he was between 38.0 and 41.8% on catch and shoot threes. Last year, that dipped to a little under 34%. So show that that's an aberration. When we spoke to him for the first time, he said, like, I can shoot that thing. Like, I'm not worried about that, essentially.
Still finished 40% from 3 last year, but
I overall, okay.
Yeah.
I think the catch and shoot
between two teams, so
sure.
Yeah.
I definitely think it was a lot lower for the Bulls, but really important for him to nail those shots as far as his viability at both the 1 and the 2. I think, playing a heavy load of minutes at the 2. He's proven capable of that defensively. He routinely guards guys who are 6'6", 6'7", and is a pest notoriously in that regard. But his value as an off-ball player on offense, I think, is just how much are those catch-and-shoot threes going in. I think the Sixers would love for them to go in at the rate they did for much of his NBA career, as opposed to sub 35%. So yeah, obviously another guy who's a seasoned vet, and it's not realistic to expect his game to dramatically skyrocket in one way or the other. But I think a little bounce back year with the catch and shoot threes is what I would go with as far as an area to improve.
Yeah, 40% from the floor, definitely below 40 from 3. So I
thought so. Yeah, definitely was not his strongest year there. The Bulls raved about all the qualities that people know with Pat Bev. That he's a leader. He's a tenacious competitor. Said he got rave reviews as a teammate, but yeah, he would have been a little better for them if he had made some more catch and shoot threes. And I think that's broadly true on the Sixers as well, especially when you consider Tyrese Maxey's going to play a large role here. And,
right.
Maxey's only 6'2", Beverley 6'1". That backcourt combination is inevitably going to be, slightly better if Patrick Beverley's making threes.
And, you just hope he's going to bring the tenacity and the Pat Bev nature that you've seen him develop as an NBA veteran. But he's not going to play 28 minutes a game here. So he has to find a way to bring production in less minutes. And I hope that he can be a bit of a microwave in that way. Production can come in various different ways. So it doesn't necessarily have to be from the 3-point line or, scoring. It can be creating turnovers in maybe like a TJ McConnell type of role. But I am hoping that, it's so weird because you see these players play on other teams and you could see roles and traits that they have that you could see translate to the team that you cover or have grown up watching. And then now they're here. So I just hope it comes to fruition. And I'm using that word a lot, but I think just hope that is as advertised. So that will be the biggest thing I will hope from him, is that all the tenacity and fervor and intense play that we've seen can translate here, but he will have to do it in less time because he's not going to get.
Yeah, I like that. I like that point a lot, and I think honestly, in theory, it sounds pretty good to me. The notion of maybe he can, channel those traits at an even
smaller window.
Yeah, at an even more intense way or intense level. I don't think
the fans are going to be egging him on.
Yeah. I guess just the idea of he's not someone who visibly paces himself, but maybe having to do even a little less unconscious pacing of oneself and just being undeterred and going for it with 94 feet of pressure. And maybe Nick Nurse can figure out this lineup is one where for 4 or 5 minutes, Pat is just going to press full court, and D'Anthony's going to guard the opponent's best player and be right on their chest, and we're just going to be hellacious to these other teams with these little bursts that we get from this especially defensively aggressive lineup. I could see that kind of thing working, and I kind of like the idea of the minutes go down a bit, and maybe that enables us to see even a more peak version of Pat Bev attitude-wise, and just on fire with the way he's playing.
I'm laughing to myself because I just keep seeing that video of him showing the official the charge or whatever it was in the camera of the photographer from last offseason when he was with the Lakers. Last season when he was with the Lakers.
That was an attempt at on the bench production, and I don't think it was successful. Yeah.
Hilarious. Also him standing up on the scorer's table with the Timberwolves when they won that play-in game is also a funny Pat Bev moment. But Man, I've been burying the lead a little bit here. James Harden.
Okay.
Now, is it worth talking about
Sure,
James?
yeah.
What can he do? I literally wrote playoff success.
Mhm.
That's exactly what I wrote here. But what can he do to improve going into next season?
Yeah, I said just prevent the off nights from becoming true clunkers. It's a lot easier said than done, but I do think he's a very smart basketball player who is capable of recognizing I don't have my A game tonight, and it is sensible to adapt in X, Y, and Z ways. I think this is even a little harder now because we've seen he's struggling more than he once did as a finisher and has a little less burst, and drawing fouls is just not as reliable for him as it once was. But in all honesty, I think he should be a little better than he has been at staying fully engaged and aggressive and finding intelligent solutions when the best version of himself isn't there. So
I think that's a great point.
yeah, just like instead of shooting 2 for 11 or 3 for 14 with, 5 assists and 5 turnovers, maybe that looks like, 3 for 8 with 8 assists and 2 turnovers, or maybe it is, a greater level of aggression that involves, removing, 2-point shots from your game on that night and taking a few more of the open catch and shoot threes that come your way. So, like, it's not the same answer each time. And I think it is excusable that stars aren't naturally 100% of themselves every time they step out there. But when it starts to go downhill, you got to stop that from spiraling into a disastrously bad performance. And I don't think James Harden has prevented that quite enough. I think if he was a little more successful in that regard, especially in the playoffs, that would be impactful for him. And again, I'm trying to look at it through the lens of this is a guy in his mid-30s. What is maybe attainable at this point? And I don't think that's entirely out of the question that he could be a little bit better with stopping the 3 for 17 from happening quite as often.
You know what? I said, that was a great point because when you started talking, I just had a vision of the way he plays, and he often will double down instead of the plan B. You know what I'm saying? He'll just do more of the thing that's might maybe not necessarily working, like shooting the ball more or, trying to create for himself more as opposed to maybe getting others involved or using the other aspects of his game to maybe ignite the scoring. Or
yeah. And I don't think it's always in a selfish way. I think at times he enters the game, for instance, like against the Celtics, understanding Robert Williams III is an awesome rim protector. It's not going to often be smart for me to test him and maybe get my shot blocked. And then he just leans into trying to look for teammates to a degree that becomes excessively passive, and he's not doing a lot of
kind of overcompensating.
Yeah. So yeah, there's like very fine lines, and he has a hard job, of course, as a lead ball handler on a team. But I do think his intelligence is one of his best qualities as a player, and there needs to be a little greater adaptiveness and greater problem solving on the off nights. And yeah, some of that's mental for sure. And maybe it's too late for him to make meaningful improvements there. Maybe it's not. So yeah, that did stand out for me with Harden. I think if we're getting a little more granular, a little X's and O's, we could think about, okay, he's not as good at drawing fouls anymore. He doesn't have as much burst. How should he go about adapting? But I think a lot of that depends on the team he's on, and I think this particular area is true regardless of the environment and regardless of the situation. Just fewer of those, D and F games, turn those into season C minuses. Yeah.
Well, we, to your point, have seen the players who have had longer NBA careers modify their game or change or alter their style in order to stay as more of a viable option in NBA. And we've seen players who weren't willing to do that also have shorter NBA careers because of that. So it'll be interesting to see if this is a year where Harden can continue to be in the elite upper echelon level, regardless of what team he's on, or if more of those adjustments need to be made for him. That's as far as I went because I don't necessarily see much merit in dissecting, Furkan Korkmaz and Jaden Springer necessarily, who don't play as much of a significant role. But were there other guys you pinpointed, like Mo Bamba or other guys?
We got a few on here. Yeah, we could maybe touch on Daniel House Jr. Like, I think in all likelihood he's probably a rotation guy.
Yeah.
It sounds like that will be the case, at least early in the year. So I think for him, it's just be on point with the details. Memorable for me was, I think it was after the second or third game of the season, asking Doc Rivers about the Sixers spacing around Embiid, and Rivers was openly frustrated about House not being in the right spot off ball and failing to remember just this fundamental thing that the Sixers had drilled over and over again. Of course, you cut him a little slack. It's a new team, and he's trying to learn, but I don't think as a bench player you often get much room to make those mistakes over and over again. And now he's got a new coach who he needs to prove that he's a valuable guy to. I think broadly he fits really well in a wide variety of situations. He's got some great complementary skills and just some natural adaptability, but execute the basics and don't give this coaching staff an excuse to remove you from the rotation or to say, House is annoying us with, X or Y mistake that keeps popping up. Let's try Jaden Springer in this role, or let's give another guy a shot, or, keep showing that you are a vet, that you are reliable, and that you're not gonna, screw up some of the basics. So that's definitely a little nitpicky. I think House, of course, had a great postseason performance for the Sixers in that Game 5 against Boston. That's awesome. I think that's more than you can usually expect from like a 9th or 10th guy in your roster. But now that role might be more like an 8th or 7th guy, depending on how things shake out. And I think he has tools where he can earn those sort of minutes, but he needs to not mess up with the details. He needs to be really precise there and conduct himself like a veteran night after night with that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. You could see him having a more defined role in Nick Nurse's system as opposed to Doc Rivers. And you could tell he had kind of creeped into the doghouse a bit with the coaching staff because his role or opportunity wasn't there. But when his name was called, he was ready. And it's always cool to see a guy like Daniel, very nice guy, easy to talk to, get his opportunities and seize them. Anyone else that you had on your list there?
We had Springer and Bamba, but yeah, we don't need to, I think, go in just a ton of depth. Jaden Springer, offense, 3-point shooting, all of that stuff. I think
didn't say defense. So
defense is not on there. I don't think he needs to improve defensively. I think it would be great if he does, but
definitely a strong suit of his game.
Yeah, take the threes. Like same with many of PJ Tucker, Patrick Beverley. Yes, Joel Embiid should be the crown jewel of the offense still, but as a role player, you need to take open shots. And then, of course, Springer, still an open question of can he make them at a good rate in the NBA? Then Mo Bamba, I think just being smart and agile defensively when he's asked to do things that are not rim protection. We know he's a legit shot blocker, has that, absurd 7'10" wingspan or whatever, but okay, if he does get those intriguing chances to play next to Joel Embiid, can he hang with fours? Can he know the scouting report for the specific guy he's guarding that night? Can he do things beyond drop coverage? I think just will be interesting there to see, is he quick enough to take on some of those minutes, and like, does he have the self-awareness to know how he should approach it? Sure, some of that's just, okay, the coaching staff is telling you to do this and that, on a specific night. But I think also he's been in the league for a bit. Can he, not make the same mistake, twice in a row against this player, against a 4 who, is a non-threat as a shooter? Can he avoid going for a pump fake? Just being really on point again with some of the nuances of NBA defense that are not rim protection. I think there are no doubts that he's valuable and talented as a rim protector, but when those opportunities come his way to do other stuff, I think it matters that he's savvy, that he shows off a little agility, and that he I think feeds into this notion that he can play a bit at the 4.
The Sixers are still trying to figure things out with James Harden. We are pinpointing details each player can improve on for next season. And if you're jonesing for some basketball, Team USA FIBA World Cup schedule is out there. Be sure to check it out. They were down almost 20, I think, to Germany, and were able to come back.
Furkan had a big international performance recently as well. Give him some credit.
There you go. Shout out to Furkan Korkmaz and the rest of the players competing. And I hope that everyone comes out healthy. Noah, anything on the website you want to highlight that you're working on right now?
Yeah, I mean, we had a story today recapping exactly why James Harden was fined $100,000 and running down the context there. And yeah, we'll have more to come in the days ahead on that. So yeah, I think that's the main stuff to note.
Be sure to follow him on social media at Noah Levick and check out his work on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com. For our producer extraordinaire Ben Barry, I'm Danny Pommells. This has been the Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University. WilMU Works. We'll see you next time.